1 billion naira. That's how much former Kaduna State Governor Nasiru El-Rufai sued the ICPC over alleged unlawful invasion of his Abuja residence. There's been a menace of financial crimes in the country. The question is our money safe? Police say they have a new strategy, but should we now be worried about these criminals who can steal money from wherever they are in the world? Hello everyone, welcome to the program. This is Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I am Sean Kimale right here for you in Abuja. Tonight, our attention is some of the major political stories, from the stories of El-Rufai to what transpired in the elections, and those who are talking about what the Electoral Act could do for us in the coming elections. Plus, there are concerns about financial crimes and the dimension in which some of these criminals are going. It's now a pandemic of how these guys are now looking for your money, but the police say they have got it covered. We need to find out whether or not the police have what it takes to protect you from all of these cyber criminals. But before we get started on our conversation tonight, let's check out some of their political roundup stories.
The Senate has called for the provision of special funding for the Federal Ministry of Environment to tackle erosion, flooding, and other environmental challenges across the country. The chairman of the Senate Committee on Environment, Senator Olubi Fadeyi, made the call when the ministry officials appeared to defend the 2026 budget of the ministry. Senator Fadeyi said funds appropriated annually to the ministry and its agencies were very inadequate to tackle the environmental issues. He listed the issues requiring urgent attention, including environmental management, erosion control, environmental health, forest protection, and other forms of environmental degradation. Some candidates of the People's Democratic Party who participated in Saturday's area council elections in the Federal Capital Territory have rejected the outcome of the exercise, alleging manipulation of figures at the wards and local government collation centers. Addressing journalists in Abuja, the contestants, who are mainly councillorship candidates of the PDP, vowed to head to the tribunal to challenge the results as announced by the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC). The candidates also call on the electoral umpire to tighten all the loose ends that the area council elections have thrown out ahead of the 2027 general elections. The All Progressives Congress (APC) has conducted its wards and local government congresses across the 11 local governments and 114 wards of Gombe State. The ruling party says it has chosen consensus model in determining its leadership at both ward and local government levels in the state, saying it would foster greater internal democracy, cohesion, and meritocracy. Even as an Igbo man, Mr. Edwin Chukwujeku from Anambra emerges among Bolari East Ward executives. While commending the leadership of President Bola Tinubu, Governor Inuwa Yahaya believes APC is within touching distance to victory at all levels ahead of the 2027 general polls.
Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us on the program. Let's tell you that the former Kaduna State Governor, Malam Nasiru El-Rufai, has filed a 1 billion naira fundamental rights enforcement suit against the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, the ICPC, over what he termed the alleged unlawful invasion of his Abuja residence. Malam El-Rufai, through his team of lawyers led by Mr. Oluwole Yamu, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, is challenging the validity of a search warrant issued on February the 4th by Chief Magistrate of the Magistrates Court of the FCT, listed as the second respondent in the suit. In the originating motion and notice, the former governor sued ICPC as the first respondent, while the Chief Magistrate Magistrate Court of the FCT Abuja Magistrate District The Inspector General of Police and the Attorney General of the Federation were named as second to fourth respondents, respectively, in the suit dated and filed on the 20th of February by Mr. El-Rufai says, seeking 7 reliefs. He prayed the court to declare that the search warrant authorizing the search and seizure at his residence was invalid, null, and void. We do know that since Madam El-Rufai landed in Nigeria a few days ago, he has been facing investigation and interrogation by the state until he made a statement on television where he alleged that there were moves or moments of listening to the calls of the National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu. So he was arrested or investigated by the FCT, held in their custody for about 2 or 3 days before he was then now moved to the ICPC custody. But we've got a lot of issues to tackle tonight. First is going to be about the Electoral Act Amendment and the issues relating to our elections, whether or not we are moving forward or backwards, and then we might be able to touch on Malam El-Rufai's trial and some of the issues that he's facing, especially the account of his stewardship while he was governor of Kaduna State, which is now being brought to the fore, and whether or not this is a calculated political witch hunt or is the state is asking him critical questions about what he did when he was governor. I'm being joined tonight by a former chairman of the National Human Rights Commission. He's a human rights lawyer. Professor Chidi Odinkalu is virtually joining us tonight on the program. Thank you, Prof, for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me, Shell. I hope you're good.
We're good. The weather is very clement right here. I don't know whether that yours is. I'm not sure how clement your weather is.
Clement used to be my boss, Clement Wanko, that is. I think I can answer to many of the things you've said. The one thing I'm not able to answer to is lawyer. The lawyer part, I think if you just put citizen, that's fine by me. Human rights citizen, that's okay.
You and I have had this debate. Your years in law school and studying law, I cannot ignore it because I will need your legal knowledge here at some point on the program. So we have debated this. I think that you should have just allowed the final verdict, which was from me, to be the president in this matter. So yes, a lawyer, human rights lawyer, is that Professor Chidi Odinkalu. But let's begin the conversation, Prof. Difficult to have a debate with professors like you. But let's begin. The Electoral Act Amendment. You've been watching and listening to the debate to where we were and where we are right now. And we saw Senator Mbamdele's defense and saying, look, there is whatever was done were major reforms to the electoral law. But I mean, elections of 2027 are already in the corner, and the process has begun. And FCT elections, Rivers by-elections were held on Saturday. But what is your view, or what's your take on your assessment so far?
Well, thank you for having me. I probably am an outlier on the question of electoral reform, lack of reform in Nigeria, because my settled view for quite a time has been the problem is not law, it's electoral administration. No amount of legislative lawyering, drafting can address the crisis of electoral administration that we have if we do not wish to address it. There is no other country that I know of in the world that has to enact a new piece of legislation every time it has to go for an election. For every cycle of election going back to the origin of presidentialism in Nigeria in 1978, we seek to enact a new piece of legislation. The only time I believe we have not done that has been or was 2019, if I'm not mistaken. And the reason the politicians, for the most part, and ruling parties sign up to these electoral acts, the charade of electoral acts preceding every election, is not to make elections better. It is to indulge themselves in the act of seeking to predetermine the outcome of the next election, which they hope to manufacture, in which they hope to manufacture victory, not through the votes of the people, but by procuring announcements that predetermine them as winners. So I'm not one, I don't pass these pieces of things that we call electoral acts for meaning. I just think there are charades. I think there are lots of interest invested in them for the wrong reasons, and I try not to insert myself into the conversations about electoral. You've not heard me get involved in it because I think it's a waste of my time.
So you don't think that there is any kind of change or departure from the, something new that we should glory over, we should joy over ahead of 2027 election? Comparing 2022 and 2026 electoral laws.
Look, if Josh Amukpito, my dear brother and schoolmate, were to come out and say, look, you people who were writing up results last Saturday, you will not do it in my INEC. That will do more for all that we're talking about than this waste of time of parliamentary charades. Okay? Now we're trying to write out of the law things that are actually, for the most part, unlawful. Ballot stuffing is unlawful. It still happens. The manufacture of election results is unlawful. It still happens. Most of the things that we are seeking to outlaw are already outlawed in our law. We are trying to write into law what essentially is created by the criminality of those in power. Okay? And as long as you're dealing with the criminality of people in power, no amount of writing is going to preclude it. Now, on Friday, Nyesom Wike, the minister for the FCT, came out to declare Thursday night, declared Friday a public holiday. He was not pretending to act under any law. Now, you will want to, next cycle of elections, you want to write an electoral act so that you will say the minister for the FCT shall not declare a public holiday on the eve of an election. That's nonsensical. That's not the way laws work. And this is my problem.
Are you saying the minister does not, and he has come out to say those who are criticizing him for taking that decisions are just not informed about the decision and what came the history or the backstory of it? He said he got the permission and the word from the president before he went ahead, and he says there's nothing that he did that is unlawful.
Look, I'm sorry. The power does not belong to the minister for the FCT. The interior minister is the person who has the power. Nyesom Wike is a lot of wonderful things. I'm not quite sure. Coherence is one of his most remarkable attributes. All right. So what I'm saying here is that whether or not he claims to have been right, now you cannot, ahead of the election, say 2030 or 2031, now say, okay, we are going to write a new piece of legislation to preclude the minister for the FCT, whosoever it's going to be at that time, from doing what he did this last time. That's not the way laws are written. And so I quite fundamentally disagree with my own friends who are into this business of let's write a new electoral act every time. We are wimping out from what needs to be done, and that is reform electoral administration. And let me say, on this program, I had previously told you that Josh Amukpito, the current chair of INEC, was in my law school set, and as far as I know, Josh was a person of basic decency. That's the expression I used. Correct? And I will expect somebody of basic decency, as the Josh whom I knew, to say things happened in this election last Saturday that should not have happened. Things happened that were unlawful, and we are going to take every step we can to stamp them out. Now, you cannot tolerate, as a credible electoral administrator, some of the things that we saw on Saturday. Forget the politics of where you stand, all right? Now, if an electoral administrator is unwilling or unable to do that, then the person is unfair. Whether you have 1 million new electoral acts, without Amukwetan taking a step to flush this thing out and stamp it out, no amount of law is going to help you. I'm not even going to get into the judges, all right? Because the Supreme Court has made a mess of every effort to reform electoral law through parliamentary conduct. And the biggest jump we had in election work in Nigeria was Atahiru Jega between 2010 and 2011. And I keep going back to that. At the end of the 2007 elections, 86.35% of the offices contested were resolved by the courts. Atahiru Jega had 10 months to organize the 2011 general elections. 10 months. And at the end of the 2011 general elections, he cut the number of contested offices that ended up in the tribunals and were decided by the tribunals from 86.35% to 51%. That was an improvement of 36.35% in one election cycle. We never had anything close before. It was not because the law changed. It was because the administrator was determined to do something about elections.
But you're painting a very gloomy and a hopeless situation about our electoral development and growth. And you almost describe something that is likely impossible with Professor Amopiton as one that could help us change what is going on. But there are those who believe that there is a possibility that we can change things around. But if you look at the FCT election, the Rivers by-elections, do you see any trace, or how would you assess those elections that we saw over the weekend?
INEC failed. Amukwiton's INEC failed, and failed woefully. And on this evidence, nobody can trust Josh Amukwiton to organize credible elections in 2027. Full stop. There is nothing else to it. Okay? No, it's not about the law. It is about the failure of will. It's a failure of electoral administration. And no, I'm actually not far from painting a gloomy picture of elections in Nigeria. I'm actually saying that the picture is far from gloomy. But election administrators have got to do their homework, and if they're not willing to do their homework, they should get the hell out.
I mean, on what basis would you say, Prof? Is it fair to say INEC under Amupiton has failed? That's President Amupiton's, literally, his very first outing since he got into office. And you're declaring the failure already. The day has not even broken yet.
No, sir. First of all, his first outing was in Anambra State. Second of all, the Federal Capital Territory is very visible. This was local election. It is a very visible place. It's the center or epicenter of government and politics in Nigeria. It was local election. So the stakes were not as high as you would have in in presidential elections or in general elections. Okay? Now, the pressure, stresses were also not as high. So this was well-made, tailor-made for a promenade, for his outing with a bang. And he failed. Let us be clear about that. He failed woefully.
What are the parameters of what are your parameters of your assessment? And you are a professor, you are a teacher. Before you fail a student, I mean, you must have reasons for their failure. How has Josh Amupiton failed?
Number one, election logistics were poor. Now, first of all, you've got to understand the context. I was just trying to outline those, right? But one, election logistics were poor. Number two, the management of electoral rolls were poor. You reassigned people to different electoral units, polling units, with hours before the elections. And we know this. And elections, you were sending out text messaging to tell people that that they had been reassigned. No education, no voter investment in voter education or information management, nothing. Number 3, the violence was unacceptable. 4, results manifestly were changed in different places. Collation glitched on the day. This is in a small election in the Federal Capital Territory. This is graceful. Josh failed. Sorry.
That is rather an assessment that doesn't paint a very good picture ahead of 2027 elections.
No, he can actually say, he can come out and say, look, I take personal responsibility. This is a chastening experience. Yes, I am learning. And but some of these things I saw cannot happen on my watch. Okay? No, but to simply pretend as if these things did not happen and to say, oh, well, this is the standard to which elections should be organized, I think would be irresponsible. Citizens are not asking for perfection, mind you. People are looking for evidence of improvement and evidence of commitment to improvement. Nobody is asking for perfection here. It's not as if people do not understand that there could be failures. But the idea that we deny that there are failures, the idea that we accept that failure is the only path for us is something I think we've all got to resist and call attention to. And I do expect, let me repeat myself, that a chairperson of INEC who is committed to credible elections would admit that there are failures that should never have happened on the watch of a credible electoral administrator, and will say we will do something about this, and we will enlist citizens who are not partisan, who have no partisan commitment, whose only goal is to see credible elections and the will of the people prevail, to see how we address these issues.
Although INEC had come out to explain some of the reasons behind some of the issues we saw, but there are those who will think, Prof, I don't agree with you. Why? APC won 5, PDP won 1. Is it because you don't like APC? That's why you think that the election was not well conducted. Those on that side who will say elections were in fact fantastic, and that's why their party won outrightly.
What do you mean? What is my business with liking APC or PDP? Are they my girlfriends? As a fact of life, most of my natural friends actually avoid APC. Felix Morka, who is the National Publicity Secretary of APC. Felix and I go back, God knows what, nearly 40 years. All right? Now, I could go on, but so the fact of this is not the point. And Felix will remain my brother irrespective of politics. All right? But this is not the issue, though. We owe ourselves duties as citizens. And I've told you here, I'm not asking for perfection. All I'm asking for is a commitment to a different way, of a country with a sense of a mission towards progress. Okay? And that is the problem. So this is not about whom you like or don't like. If you don't have, as a matter of fact, the people whom we owe the greatest duty of truth and candor are our closest friends. If we cannot tell our closest friends the truth, then we are not honest friends, and we cannot claim to be friends of those people. Anybody who thinks that elections should be organized to the standard of what happened on Saturday probably either does not understand what elections mean or does not wish the country well. Now, anybody who thinks that a repeat of what happened on Saturday would be good and a proper way to organize elections in 2027, of course, is mistaken. But do I expect a government headed by the current president to organize credible elections, or an FCT supervised by Wike to organize credible elections? I don't think so. No. I will also be honest about that.
So, if there's something that needs to be done, and of course, I know you've been listening, watching, and monitoring what has been happening on the political scene, and the kind of competition we're seeing, the opposition politics, and even the ruling party, and the manner in which they're conducting themselves. If there's something that the umpire perhaps needs to do urgently to change the narrative, of course, they've given statistics as to how the election went, the logistics. the result collation, the IRF portal performance. They gave all of the logistics and all that. And there's a lot to learn from what happened on Saturday. But if there's one thing that needs to be urgently fixed, what would that be for you?
The problem with elections in Nigeria has always been the same thing. It's not changed. When some of us were busy assisting Atahiru Jega in addressing it, it was the same thing. One word, collation. All right? Now, we've never really had much of a problem with voting and administering voting and all of that. But in the transition between the end of voting and the announcement of results, that is where the problem has always been. Now, and in the transition from Jega to Mahmoud Yakubu, there were efforts, quite focused, to try and address that. Mahmoud Yakubu, in my respectful opinion, sabotaged that willfully. He alone knows why he did. I don't. I can't speak for him, but I can say, as a matter of personal opinion, that is very well informed that he did sabotage it. Now, subsequently, I don't know what they're doing because but quite clearly, the one thing that needs to be fixed is that interregnum, that time capsule between the end of voting and the announcement of results. It is one word, collation. Unless, and all of this stuff about, real time or non-real time transmission of results. What we tried to do in the past as a country was to relocate the site of solutions from systems to technology. And we now understand that technology does not work except you have addressed systems and you've addressed people. So you need to address the systems and the people, and you need to set up the normative system of proper administration before technology can work. The moment we've not done that, and as a result, what happens is that when you try to set up technology, the politicians reverse engineer the technology in order to get the outcome they want. And in that, with all due respect, the politicians are in a conspiracy with the judges.
50% of the total registered voters in the FCT came out on Saturday to vote. That's an awful low number of voters, although it's an increase from the 9% we saw in 2022. But it brings me to this question, Prof. What do you see of 2027? The kind of competition is crystal clear that President Bola Tinubu might be getting the ticket of the APC. But with the state of affairs in the country, the kind of opposition forces that we're seeing in the ilk of Peter Obi, Atiku Abubakar, Rotimi Amechi, what kind of competition are you foreseeing could happen in 2027?
It's not about competition as such. First of all, I think the numbers and what's happened with the numbers and the crash in numbers of people turning up to vote is a reflection of the citizen perceptions of election administration. They're not worrying about Electoral Act or no Electoral Act. They do not think that most citizens increasingly believe that showing up to go and vote under the current infrastructure and system of election administration is a waste of time. It's a reflection on the leadership of INEC. I think it's important to understate that, to not understate that. It's not about Electoral Act, all right? Now, but it's also a fact of the state of the political system of political actors. And it's, I've been hard enough here on INEC and on President Tinubu and Nyesom Wike. It's also, but, I'm a lot harder on the opposition. I think the opposition forces, the ADC, whoever else, I don't even know which PDP there is now, if there is any, because Nyesom Wike is APC faction of PDP, it seems to me. But these so-called opposition forces, in my view, are an utter disgrace. And I say that with no apologies to anybody. Now, take an example. So Nyesom Wike wakes up on Thursday night, after people have started retiring, to declare a public holiday. If I were a member of a political party and I were a leader of a political party, I'll call a rally on Friday. That was a fantastic opportunity for opposition leadership to prove itself. If you had troops, political troops on the ground, call a rally on that Friday to dare him and use that to mobilize. What did they do? They were indoors, sleeping. So I can't also, it's difficult to speak to the ineptitude of political opposition in Nigeria. They are not serious. And I think anybody who looks at the system has got to say at the moment there is absolutely no opposition. What I do not understand, however, in the face of that, is why the ruling party still feels the need to manufacture the kinds of things it does, from violence to rewriting results to putting one where it should not be in order to turn hundreds into thousands. I do not understand why they feel the need to do that, because there is actually no opposition.
Prof, let's wrap up the conversation with your very good friend, perhaps your best friend, I guess, Malam Nasir El-Rufai, former governor of Kaduna, said, who has sued the ICPC 1 billion naira for alleged illegal invasion of his residence in Abuja. And a lot of things are now coming to the table. Assessment and questions, investigation of his record of stewardship while he was governor. And perhaps what he said about confessing that there was somebody listening to the cause of the National Security Advisor, Nuhu Badu. And those who said, look, those are very, very, there are cases, that matter has also been taken to court by the DSS. A charge has been filed on matter. What as a lawyer, what's your view on El-Rufai, your very good friend?
Well, Nasir El-Rufai is a Nigerian citizen, as I like to say, and as a citizen, is entitled to legal protection and to the protection of the Constitution. Due process is a requirement of the Constitution under Section 36, I believe, and I do think that no citizen should be above the law, and no citizen should be beneath the law, whether for good or for awful reasons. Okay, now. He's taking recourse to the courts, as he's very well entitled to set aside an arrest warrant issued by a magistrate. When he was governor of Kaduna State, he actually did the same thing. A search warrant. He wanted me abducted. And he went about trying to procure something without notice to me in order for me to get abducted. We finally got notice of that, and we were in court. I had to instruct lawyers, Gloria Balasan, to help me preclude him from abducting me. He has not been abducted, which is better than he did to a lot of the people whom he oppressed when he was governor of Kaduna State. I do not wish him oppression. Let me be very clear. I wish him rule of law. That is clear. Let the facts be investigated and let the chips fall where they may. But I will not grant him impunity. I think he's a Nigerian citizen and he is subject to law. If the only lesson of this particular experience is that everyone should understand that power is transient, it will end one day, and when you have it, you should exercise it responsibly. That lesson would have been well learned. I do not pity him, and I don't think he expects anybody to pity him. I also do not expect that he should expect or think that having been governor, or not because he's an emergency opposition person, he will be entitled to impunity. I hope not.
But so far, do you think there's any kind of political witch hunt in his trial so far?
That question is outside my pay grade, quite honestly. Let me be very clear about one thing, though. No legal system is in a position to prosecute every crime that is committed within its jurisdiction. And legal systems have got to prioritize at any point in time what cases they take to court and what cases they don't take to court. What considerations go into that is ultimately down to prosecutorial discretion, whether of the entities that have prosecutorial powers, ICPC, EFCC, State Security Service, ultimately the Attorney General at the state or federal level. And I've not been an Attorney General. I do not aspire to be one. I would reject the position of Attorney General if offered to me. And I respect the discretion of people who accept to serve in those positions. I've made an exception publicly of saying that Abubakar Malami was unfit to be Attorney General, but that is the only person in respect of whom I have been able to reach that conclusion. I respect Attorney General by virtue of office, and I expect that everybody who exercises that office ultimately understands that it's a public trust, and they've got to exercise it in pursuit of the public good. I will make an independent assessment of the charges and proofs of evidence if and when I see them, but I would not, without seeing evidence, claim that because it is Nasir El-Rufai, therefore it is a politically motivated circumstance. I cannot possibly do that in good conscience.
Professor Chidin Odinkalu, former chairman of the Nigerian Human Rights Commission, a human rights lawyer, and Professor, thanks so much indeed for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you for having me, Sharon.
If you don't need your law school certificate, you can send it to me. Let me see whether I can scan it and see what I can do with it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We'll take a break, everyone. The question everyone is asking, is my money safe? The police is saying they're looking for the criminals who are sitting in some corners and stealing people's money using the internet. You've got to be very careful. But what is the police doing? We're going to be finding out after this break, everyone. Everyone for staying with us. There is a pandemic. This time around, not a medical pandemic. This is a financial crime pandemic. Just a few days ago, we understand that the Nigerian police force says it is dismantled an alleged online investment scam center operating out of Agbo in Delta State, arresting 7 suspects accused of targeting victims in the United Kingdom and the United States through fake cryptocurrency platforms. The operation, supported by the UK's National Crime Agency and Digital Insight for Meta, highlights growing international collaboration as authorities confront cyber-enabled fraud and illicit financial flows. We now understand that the IG under IG Alberto Dokun says he's framed a new financial security as part of a central national security strategy in his office to fight this criminality that is hurting Nigeria's global reputation. You remember that some folks were cloning Microsoft's page, making people believe that they were actually logging into that global online platform. Well, let's get to hear from the Nigerian police force, because this is concerning, and it's also bringing the very popular saying 419. I'm being joined by the force PRO, Mr. Benjamin Udein, who is live for us here in our studio. Thank you so much, Mr. Udein.
Good evening, and thanks for having me on the show tonight.
Should we be worried that our money is not safe?
Well, you should not be worried, because the Nigeria Police Force is there, especially through the National Cyber Crime Center, which is domiciled with the police. We are doing a lot, so you shouldn't be worried. Just like you mentioned, recently we carried out an operation with the FBI. Yes, the same FBI in the USA. When people were cloning Microsoft, they commenced the investigation, and it led them to Nigeria. So they just passed what they had to us, to the NCCC, National Cyber Crime Center, and the suspects were all arrested. There was another one where people were doing the same thing with Meta, and it was being investigated in the UK by the NCA, National Crime Agency. Of course, they also passed what they had to us. The NCCC also carried out its investigation, and the suspects were arrested. And the list goes on and on. Recently, we arrested suspects in a case of 7.7 billion naira worth of airtime and data that was stolen from a telecommunication company. We were able to arrest them and to recover part of the funds. So people have nothing to worry about. And this is in furtherance to the vision, policing vision of the Inspector General of Police. This policing vision is to have a police force that is professionally competent, service-driven, rule of law compliant, and people-friendly to support the agenda of government for economic growth and recovery. So that's what you're seeing. Yes.
So EFCC and ICPC are also fighting financial crimes. But when we hear these crackdown on some of these elements, it brings something to mind. Why are we seeing a rise in some of this criminality?
Well, maybe not a rise particularly. Maybe you are just getting to see more of our achievements in that area. Maybe not necessarily a rise. So what we are doing is ramping up our efforts to make sure that we bring cybercrime in the country to zero.
But is the cyberspace in Nigeria safe to transact money and to trade?
I'll tell you why it is safe. Recently, the Inspector General of Police met with the DG of Security and Exchange Commission. A week after, he met with the leadership of the Nigerian Exchange Group, formerly known as Nigeria Stock Exchange. And a week after, he met with the Committee of Bank CEOs. And when he was meeting with the Committee of Bank CEOs, a couple of bank CEOs attested to the fact that when they had some kind of issues, fraud issues, they reached out to the National Cybercrime Center and they were able to solve the
Those
issues.
guys really very active at the NCC.
Oh, they are. As a matter of fact, the Nigerian NCCC, that's what it's called, has been adjudged the best cybercrime center in Africa. Yes, because every country has a cybercrime center. The one in Nigeria has been adjudged the best. We've met with other cybercrime centers recently in Rwanda, and they were.
What makes the Nigerian own the best?
Oh, capability and achievement, and that's why FBI, even Secret Service, NCA, they would always, when they are coming to the country to conclude their investigation, it's always NCCC. So they are very good. And like I was saying, some bank CEOs actually attested to the fact that, this center has actually helped them. And guess what? The following week, the Committee of Bank CEOs actually sent a delegation to visit the center here in Abuja to see what they do, what they are capable of doing, and to work more with them. So I can assure you that investors' money is safe in Nigeria because we have the National Cybercrime Center.
Just to digress, Sowore's matter against the Inspector General of Police and the Nigerian Police Force, it does look like, and things are really getting dirty with some of the comments. The police has not paid the 30 million naira that the court has asked you to pay for illegally arresting him.
Well, there's a name to it, not just the police. I think that judgment read the particular office. It didn't say IGP.
That's the
Lagos Commissioner of Police, Lagos State. So that has been sorted out.
So why all the police is one, isn't it?
Well, that's been sorted out in Lagos. It's a particular office, but that's part of the mischief we are talking about. I mean, why would you be talking about? You rightly said it in the body, in the text, that the Commissioner of Police in Lagos State has not paid the money, and you are putting the picture of the IGP. So for people who will not be patient enough to read the text, they'll just see the IGP and conclude that that's what it is. So it's sad that we are seeing lots of this mischief coming, and that prompted us to approach the courts to get an injunction to restrain Sowore and Sarah reporters from coming up with all these frivolities, falsehood, and fabricated claims. They are all lies. And ordinarily, the Inspector General of Police would not even respond to this. Or let me put it this way. Ordinarily, Dr. Egbetokun would not respond to this. But because it is IGP Egbetokun, it goes beyond the person. It's about the office. That office, it's about the institution. So there's a need to...
So is that the reason why the paraphernalia of the office of the IG is used to respond to Sowore? Because there are those who will say Sowore is, and if you see his attack on the person of IGP Egbetokun, it's being against IGP Egbetokun. So there are those who say, why are you using the office of the IG?
But you just said
against Sowore.
But you just said it. His attack is against IGP Egbetokun. So that comes first, IGP. You're attacking the head of the primary agency for internal security, and it has grave consequences. When you try to run down the police force, when you try to undermine people's trust and confidence in the force, it has grave consequences.
There are fundamental questions Sowore has been asking. The police force has not been able to answer.
Fundamental questions based on falsehood. They have been, I can chronicle all the falsehood he's been peddling. And the danger is when you repeat falsehood over and over again, some people, some gullible people, tend to believe that is true. So there is no basis for answering these questions because to start with, they are laid on a foundation of falsehood.
What's the history behind Sowore and IG? Have they met before? Do they know each other before?
Well, yes.
Because he's never going to get off the backs of IG.
Well, the court has asked him to stop, to refrain from that, and if he doesn't do that, then he's going against the court order because we cannot allow this kind of thing to continue. It doesn't really make any sense for you to just wake up and commence a campaign of calumny against him. Oh, you could remember when he said, 100 million naira was paid into the account of the son of the IGP. And you know, I called the son of the IGP immediately to find out what happened, and he explained that yes, I saw 100 million in my account, and I told my account officer to reverse the money immediately, which he did. He printed out his statement of account, he showed me, he sent it to me, I saw it, which he did. Only for Sowore reporters to say, oh yes, the money was returned, then cash was withdrawn again and paid into the IGP son's account again. And I saw the statement of account, there was nothing like that. In fact, exposing the details of the account and everything, the young man was forced to close down that account so that people would not use it to commit any other form of mischief. In any case, he has written a petition to the EFCC for that allegation to be investigated. And if it turns out that it's false, then we can invoke the EFCC would invoke the Cyber Crimes Act for cyberbullying. So
again, on Sowore, how many cases do you have against Sowore?
He has brought all of this up for himself. Falsehood. You remember my cosmate, the PSO, Principal Staff Officer to the IGP, ACP Bukola Kuti, is my cosmate. But we said on Sowore reporters that she was promoted to AC while her cosmates were still SPs, that's superintendent. That's a lie. When she was promoted to AC, we, our cosmates, were already CSPs, and she was not the only one that was promoted. A total of 141,000 officers have been promoted on this current IGP. Why focus on Buki? And in fact, if you are saying Buki was promoted to ACP Buki was promoted to ACP, she wasn't the only one that was promoted to ACP, even amongst her sets at that same time. I also saw one claim that ACP Buki is so powerful that she's the one controlling promotion at the Police Service Commission. How is that possible? Service Commission is headed by a retired DIG. ACP Buki is telling the IGP to send AIG Disu on early retirement. How is that possible? AIG Disu is billed normally to retire in April this year. So the list goes on and on and on. And we cannot just sit back and see him try to erode the confidence.
It seems the office of the IG is uncomfortable with the searchlight that Sowore and some other people
we're doing this just because of gullible people. Ordinarily, these are not things we should respond to. We have serious issues. In fact, police officers can attest to the fact that the IGP he has very clean record. He isn't corrupt. People that have met him since when he was in state CID in Lagos, Banti in Lagos, he's an incorruptible person. So we shouldn't respond. But like I said, we have gullible people who believe that when falsehood is being peddled over and over again, then it is true. And we have to protect the sanctity, the integrity of the force.
He's always called the IG illegal IG.
Because he has refused to accept a duly amended Police Act, which says anybody appointed IG will spend 4 years irrespective of their age or their length of service. So I don't know why somebody would decide to use his own version of the law and not the one that has been passed by the National Assembly. So that points again to mischief.
Are you able to call Sowore to the table and say, find that? Because I mean, for someone who owns the platform like Sowore Reporters, and if there are things that are being published, it must have a perspective. There must have been an angle.
Well, we choose to respond officially. Oh, you've said this, and this is what we've said. But you know, we have responded and clarified issues over and over and over again. And this person is hell bent on peddling the same falsehood of Sowore said IG was harboring a criminal inside Force Headquarters and was giving him security to be committing fraud. How is that possible? How is that even reasonable? Well, we're happy that the case is being handled by the EFCC now, so that the truth can come to light. But I can assure you, I stay in that same Force Headquarters. I stay on the 7th floor. So to get to the 7th floor, I move from ground floor to 7th floor every day. And I can tell you that that is not even possible. So these are the extent of lies that have been peddled. So like I said, we've responded, but if you choose to keep doing what is obviously wrong, then we have no option but in the interest of the organization, the sanctity of the organization, to approach the courts to stop you, and that has been done.
I mean, I saw all of those online, but the reason, finally, that I invited is because of these. And there are those who are abroad who had called and said there are issues related to financial crimes. Is the police working hand in hand with other agencies like the FCT to collaborate to ensure that Nigerians' monies are safe?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. We all meet regularly. We meet in the office of the National Security Advisor. We meet at other fora. We meet regularly to discuss cybercrime, to work on cybercrime. Sometimes we even meet with the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC. We collaborate with them a lot. If you see the UNODC report of 2025, if you open it, there is extensive mention of Nigeria Police Force, National Cybercrime Center, EFCC, ICPC. So we work together a lot.
Benjamin Hudain is the first PRO of the Nigerian Police. Thanks so much indeed for your time today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
That's our show for today, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sean Akimale. God bless Nigeria.